I don't know if you can hear it, but the recycle truck is outside. Okay, they're gone. Good. I have a random cane. Actually, it's not random. So, um, given stuff that's happening in the chapters in One Piece at the moment in regards to things that we are finding out about the Reverie and what happened with Cobra and Vivi and probably several of the other royal families that were there at the same time, and everything. I'm going to start my series that I've been actually kind of working on for a little while, where I talk about the different leaders and rulers and, insert mayors, whatever you want to go with, in One Piece that we've seen in regards to ones that are part of like an official government. Or hold like a governmental position in regards to being like the king or the queen or the president or the mayor or the governor or something along those lines that hold this kind of official capacity. I'm not going to hold the cane the entire time. We're going to put the cane over here. Stay. Don't fall. Watch, I'll fall at some point in the video. Whatever. And I've been working on this for a little while because I wanted to do a kind of a comparison thing where I talk about a bunch of the different rulers and compare like good ones, bad ones, mediocre ones, based on kind of what we know about them, what we've seen of them in the story. In regards to, I'll be talking about Wapol and Dalton and the Nefeltari family and the Riku family and, the Neptune family from, Fishman Island and like all of these other ones. Like I'll be talking about all of them, not all in one video. I'll have separate ones for each one. Some of them, depending on how much we know about them, may end up getting like 2 videos. Like I'm going to have Cobra in one video and Vivi in another video. And do some different discussions about those types of things and comparing them to like when they interact with other leaders and when they interact with their subjects and with the Straw Hats to a degree, given that, a lot of the ones on this list have interacted with the Straw Hats at some point in time, or they have direct connections, and the fact that this episode I'm going to be talking about Woop Slap, who is, of course, the mayor of Fusha Village, which is, of course, Luffy's hometown. And, he is technically the first one that we meet. I'm doing these mostly in order that we are introduced to them. And like I intend on having like 3 separate ones at least about like the Celestial Dragons. Like I'll have one that's like just the Celestial Dragons overall, one that's about the Gorosei, one that's about Im-sama. Some of those might get moved around a little bit depending on like if we end up getting chapters about the Gorosei or getting more information about Im-sama, I might wait and end up doing those a little bit later on once we get a little more information in that regard. Depending on how that goes. And, we're probably going to get some information about them in the next couple of weeks with, the chapters that are possibly coming out about, Sabo and what happened at the Reverie and everything. We'll get a little more information about that. And we'll see how that goes. And then, of course, we'll see if they show up at all in later on in different areas of the story or whatever. Then I can do, this one's talked about recently, so that gives me more information about them. But starting off, we have kind of the first one that we end up interacting with, and that is Woop Slap, who, as I stated, is the mayor of Fusha Village, which is Luffy's hometown, out in the East Blue on Dawn Island. I will have a separate video where I talk about like the royals and nobles and stuff like that of Igoa Kingdom, but that'll be a different video later on down the line. We meet Woopsop within the first chapter, within the first episode of the story. He's the very crotchety, cranky old man that's the mayor of the town. I mean, he seems to be popular enough to keep being mayor, considering he's been mayor for over a decade, if not longer than that. Given what we saw, like with Luffy as a kid and everything, and he's still the mayor now. So even though he's like crotchety and cranky and everything, he's still he's still popular enough among the people. And yeah, I love the fact that he was like number 30, the 37th most popular character in One Piece, and like that global poll that they did for One Piece, that I just found that hilarious. I love that they did that. Um I love that they managed to pull that off for Whoop Slap. That was fun. Um now in regards to like Fusha Village itself, it resembles this typical rural community and everything. With the wooden buildings and houses and everything like that. It has all the windmills all over it, which is of course where the name comes from. Um, and we know that they seem to be a fishing village to some degree, even though that they have the Lord of the Coast out in the harbor that they've had to deal with at various points in time. We know that they've had dealings with pirates in regards to Shanks. They've had dealings with mountain bandits in regards to Higama. And they seem to have an on-running relationship with the Dawn's mountain family, which I'll get to in regards to her and her mountain bandits. Different things that we see in regards to Whoop Slap in regards to his personality. For as good as I am about when it comes to writing down the characters' ages, I don't think I actually wrote down Whoop Slap's age here, which is actually very strange because I'm usually pretty good at doing that. But I think he's, I want to say Whoop Slap is in his 70s because he's known Garp for a while, and Whoop Slap seems to know something about Luffy's past, as in one of the instances we get where like Woop Slap is being somewhat angry about what's going on with Luffy and everything when he's out in the world. Makino's like, well, he's just following his dream, and Woop Slap's like, his dream or his destiny type of a thing. So, Whoop Slap may know something. Whoop Slap and Garp may actually be old friends. I don't think we've ever actually seen the two of them interact with each other, if I remember correctly. But Whoop Slap has pretty good relationships with most of the people in town. In regards to stuff, he is very protective of his town, being kind of, he tends to dislike pirates and everything, although he has this somewhat exception for Shanks, simply because of the fact of like, yes, Shanks, had his home base in the village for quite a while, but it also provided a fair amount of protection to the village by having, Shanks and his crew there for any pirates that were smart enough to know who Shanks was. But also, Shanks probably didn't like demand any type of like compensation for protection to the town, because that's not the type of person that Shanks is. Also, the fact that, whenever Shanks and the others would come back from, going and finding treasure or taking out other bad pirates, they would end up like paying Makino, pay their bar tabs and everything like that, and that puts money into the community. So Whoop Slap probably was like begrudgingly like, yeah, fine, yeah, sure, whatever, redheaded jerk can stick around. It's not like he's charming or anything. It's like Whoop Slap would like probably gripe about that stuff. We see a fair amount of him here and there. We know that he has, that he does care about Luffy. I mean, he thinks Luffy's kind of stupid for going off to trying to do what he wants to do as a pirate and everything. He criticizes that choices. He's like one of the only people in town that like actually criticizes Luffy going off to be a pirate. Same thing with Ace. He criticizes that all the time. We've seen that throughout any time we get like a checkup in, Fusha Village, excuse me, that, Whoop Slap is not happy about Luffy being a pirate and everything. Although I'm quite certain that he was probably quite upset when what happened with Ace at Marineford. I'm sure Whoop Slap was quite upset about that. And even though, I mean, I'll go over this a little bit later again, but it's like, I don't think we've seen Whoop Slap's reaction to what happened with Sabo at Reverie. We saw Makino and we saw the Dawn's reactions to it, and we saw like the Revolutionary Army's reactions, obviously. But I don't think we ever saw Whoop Slap's reaction to what happened. Like, I don't remember seeing that in the manga. I don't remember seeing that in the anime. Like, Whoop Slap reading the newspaper and A, finding out that Sabo has been alive all this time, but B, finding out that he's supposedly killed Cobra. So I don't know, maybe we'll get something about that later on, but like I don't remember ever seeing anything about that as far as I can remember. But, you know, um, Woopsop also is not very approving of Luffy's crew. He's bringing like this infamous name to our village and everything like that. He's, making us look bad. I'm like, you're a small village in the middle of nowhere outside of the Goa Kingdom in the East Blue. Very few people care about your village to begin with. And most of them either live there or are Garp or Luffy. um, well, depending on stuff, if like Dragon grew up there or has some connection to the village beyond the fact that Luffy was raised there, Dragon may have some form of affection for the village, but I doubt it. I don't quite know where that falls with Dragon. But, he also, I think Woopsop also calls like Luffy's crewmates as like freaks at some point in time in regards to seeing them. But Woopsop knows some about like, how Luffy was born and his origins. So Woopsop may very well know not only who Luffy's mother is, but who Dragon's mother is. In that regard, if he's, been in the village all that time frame and has known Garp all of that time. So he might know a lot about that. He also has like a pretty good relationship with Makino, and he also has a decent relationship with Dadan, and her mountain bandits and everything. Woopsop is actually the first one to mention Dadan's existence at all in the series, and that's sometime around Enies Lobby. He mentions, wondering what Dadan's thinking about, like Luffy challenging the world government, for Robin and everything. In regards to Woopsop's past, he, around the time of Gold Roger's execution, was already acquainted with both Makino, who was a child, and Garp again. Although I don't think, after, Garp went and found Ace and brought him back to, Fusha Village, I don't think Woopsop knew who Ace's father was. I don't think that's something that, because okay, Garp is not the smartest man in the world. He's definitely smarter than Luffy in certain circumstances. But I don't think that he would have gone blabbing to the village about who Ace's real father was. He's just like, oh, this is my grandson, take care of him, and took him in to be raised by Dadan. And then we know that later on after that, at some point in time, Luffy was kind of, given to the town to raise and take care of and everything like that. However that went, before Shanks showed up and before Luffy ate the Gumma Gumma no Mi, and then before, before Garp showed up and took him off to be taken care of by Dadan. So, Woopsop's been in the village for quite a while. And then when we get kind of into stuff with like Romance Dawn and everything, when Luffy's a little kid, we see stuff there where, he is, he's still a very rambunctious child and everything. And like, Woopsop and Makino were kind of the ones that tell Shanks what happened with Luffy, with, Luffy being captured by Higama and everything. Now, I don't know exactly how canon you want to consider some of the stuff that we saw with, like, Luffy's past with Uta that we saw in the two or three tie-in episodes that we had for Film Red. I mean, some parts of it I can probably agree with are probably pretty similar to, like, how, when Shanks first showed up on the island and everything, and, Woopsop seeing Shanks and Uta and, them interacting with Luffy, and that Shanks didn't actually pose a threat to his town, which is why he wasn't... I mean, it's not like Woopsop could have done a huge amount to try to get Ace, or to try to get Shanks to leave, you get out of here, you whippersnapper, red-haired boy, you get out of here, it's like, that's not, that doesn't seem like something that Woopsop was going to try to attempt to do. But some of the other things that we see are, during the time when, when we get like the big flashback for Goa Kingdom, we see, anytime that we get those flashbacks, Woopsop is there, he's helping with Luffy, he's, taking care of the village and everything like that. He's he's there when we see Luffy head off on his journey. I think he's there when Ace heads off on his journey. Same thing with Makino. That he's there alongside her when both of the boys head off on their adventures. We know that when Luffy and Ace and Sabo were all living with the Dawn before Sabo died, quote unquote. Before that, Woop Slap and Makino went and visited them, which pretty much implies that they knew that Garp had someone else taking care of Luffy. He probably told them, "Hey, I'm gonna go take Luffy to go stay with the Dawn and her family up in the mountains." And Makino and Woop Slap seem to know how to find them pretty easily. And then they brought new clothes for the boys and everything. And then we have the Dawn and Woop Slap just arguing with each other. Also when Higama had captured Luffy, Woop Slap tried to bargain for Luffy's life. He tried to plead for Luffy's life to try to get Higama to let him go, and that they would pay any ransom to get Luffy back. Woop Slap probably would have done for pretty much anybody else that lived in the village, but it shows that he does care very much about his people, about his constituents. We recently had a mayoral election here. And so I'm campaigning. Oh God. So much campaigning. Wonder how the elections work in Fusha Village. Do they all just get together at Makino's bar and everybody just votes and they just drop their I don't know, vote into whatever, and then after it's all done, Makino tallies it all up and she's like, "Okay, well, it looks like Woop Slap's still mayor for another 4 years. Okay, I'll see you again in a couple of years for this." People, who's gonna go up against Woop Slap? I mean, I don't know. Makino was the only other person in town that we know the name of, as far as I'm aware. I know that we have seen some of the other villagers and stuff like that over the years that are interact with Luffy and stuff, but and the rest of the villagers didn't really seem to mind having Shanks and his crew there for that year. But again, he brought money into the town when he would come back with treasure and stuff like that, so they would have money that way, and that was helpful for them. And also he did, to a degree, provide protection to the town. Also, he was not threatening them and trying to take their money or valuables or hurt them or anything like that. So I don't think most of the people in town particularly minded that Shanks was there. Woop Slap being the main exception to this. But we see, and then of course there's everything that happens with Sabo and the Gray Terminal burning down, and I'm quite certain that during that time frame, during that time frame, Woop Slap was probably quite sad about what happened with Sabo and everything, both because it's a young innocent life lost, but also he probably thought Sabo was being stupid in regards to trying to leave and ended up causing problems for a celestial dragon and all this other stuff. So there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that comes into a lot of different hats that you have to wear when you're mayor of a town. And Woop Slap has a decent hat. I'll give him that. But then throughout everything else, once we get to where, Luffy heads off on his journey and everything, many of the other villages are, of course, very supportive and happy of Luffy in regards to him going out to try to become the Pirate King and everything. Because it's not like they weren't aware of Luffy's dream and everything like that. It's not like he's almost any person he meets, "Hi, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I'm going to go be king of the pirates." It's not like that's not some, everybody in town knows this at this point in time. Pretty much the first time we get any type of a check-in with the village is during the Logtown arc, before the Straw Hats head off up Reverse Mountain, when we see Luffy get his first bounty of the 30 million and everything. We see everybody in town is reading the newspaper and everything, and they're all happy and cheering for Luffy, and then Woop Slap's just over in the corner drinking his beer or whatever it is that he's drinking. It's just yeah, silly boy. Go Luffy. I think Woop Slap somewhat wants Luffy to succeed just because he likes Luffy, but he's also this boy is gonna give us all gray hairs a lot sooner, and I already have them, type of a thing. that Luffy's infamy is like inevitable, you know, at this point in time. And then the next one we get is during, Enies Lobby, when we get the next kind of like the decks around the world or however, we get like the updates of all the characters back home and everything when the rest of the crew get their first bounties, and Luffy's is up to 300 million at this point in time and everything. This is when he sees stuff about this is when like he's reading about the stuff in the newspaper and everything about Luffy challenging the world government and everything for Robin. This is when he calls Luffy's crewmates freaks and everything like that, because at this point in time we've seen Chopper and we've seen Frankie and the stuff, so there's some stuff there, and he sees a bunch of the other pictures of them, all of that. But he also he just kind of deems all of Garp and his descendants all as just hopeless, as in there's no point in trying to stop them type of a thing. Which I'm like, okay, dude, you didn't figure that out soon enough. You should have figured that out a lot sooner. Then, of course, we get during the Summit War saga, after the post-war arc and everything, where we're getting all the Goa flashbacks. That's where we kind of learn a little bit more there. But we also cut back to the village where, Garp's gone back to the village and everything, and he's, dealing with Dodon and Makino and seeing them and, seeing Woop Slap and everything. And Woop Slap is actually the one that quietly asks what happened with Luffy, because the newspapers had declared him missing at that point in time. And Garp, tells him, it's just I don't know. He escaped Marineford on a submarine, but I don't know where he went after that. And, again, that shows that Woop Slap does care about Luffy. So we see that. And then, then we cut to, the 2 years later, post time skip arc and everything, and we get the Fishman Island saga and everything, and everybody's seen, it was after that point in time would have been after Luffy went and had the 3D 2Y tattoo show up and was at Marineford and everything. Everybody figured that out, and probably Makino and Dodon and Woop Slap were all exceedingly happy to see that Luffy was okay and that he was alive in that regard. So I'm sure they figured that out pretty quickly, that they were just okay, Luffy's alive. Good. And I just had this image in my head that anytime that there's a newspaper stuff that talks about Luffy and has his new bounty poster and everything like that, I had the image in my head of Woop Slap wanting to Woop Slap scrapbooking them. I just had that image in my head of just Woop Slap okay, more stuff about Luffy. And then he just as he's leaving the bar, he grabs one or two of the other newspapers and walks back to his house, and then he's got a whole scrapbook full of stuff about Luffy and stuff about Ace, and now one about Sabo and everything. Just going through that. I just that's his version of supporting them and everything like that. Because I mean, I think Woop Slap is somewhat proud of them, particularly when they find out about other things that the Straw Hats end up helping with down the line. Because I don't think that Woop Slap was necessarily mad that Luffy tried to go and save Ace. Because I highly doubt that Woop Slap wanted Ace to die. I think Woop Slap may have known that he was Roger's son, but I don't know if I don't remember if that's ever 100% confirmed in the series or not. Or if it is confirmed in the series that he knew before, Sengoku made that announcement. At the very least, I don't think Woop Slap held that against Ace. I don't think he would have. I would hope not. What would also be really funny is at some point in time, if when Roger and Rayleigh were first sailing around the East Blue before they headed into the Grand Line when they were first starting out, if they ended up being in Fusha Village at some point in time, but they were just no-name pirates at that point in time, and maybe they weren't there raid the village or anything, maybe they had to stop for supplies or something, and maybe they interacted with Woop Slap when he was younger. That would have been funny. And then Woop Slap later on figures out sees the bounty poster later on. Hey, wait a second, I remember this guy in his straw hat. they took my boat. However that would go. Um, however that would go, that would be kind of funny. Um, but um, when we get to the Fishman Island arc and everything, and we get from the decks of the world and everything, when they see that Luffy is fine and that he's been reunited with his, um, crew and everything, that they're alive and they're perfectly safe and that they're all heading off again and everything to continue their voyaging 2 years later and everything. He's, everybody in the town's happy and Wooflop's just again like off in the corner going, oh God, he's like the one that's not happy. And then we get to the Whole Cake Island where then we get the decks of the world. At that point in time, that's the 500 million, bounty arc at that point in time, where we're getting that moment where it's, after he's dealt with Doflamingo and now he is, considered, now he's just even stronger and everything now that he's dealt with Doflamingo. I'm assuming Woopslap was probably somewhat proud of finding out that Luffy was, because what happened was Fujitora proclaimed to the world it was Straw Hat Luffy that helped us take down Doflamingo. So I'm quite certain that Woopslap probably would have been proud of Luffy for that. He's like, okay, he took down this bad ruler. That's good. But also in that time frame, that's when we see him and Dodon and Makino, and Makino's child, who we still don't have a name for. We see all of them in Party's bar, just partying and having fun and celebrating Luffy's new bounty and everything. All of that, and I can see it that one of them might be the one where Woopsop was a little bit more wanting to be a little bit more happy at that regard. In regards to hearing that Luffy helped take down this horrible king and save a country and everything. And then we cut to the Reverie arc, the Levelly arc, whatever you want to refer to it. I like Reverie. And, then we cut to that, and then it's, this is when Luffy is declared as, the 5th Emperor of the Sea. Where that recognition comes in from Morgans and everything, and they read about Luffy's exploits in Totland, which I'm quite certain at that point in time, Garp, Dodon, and Makino would have been like, do we really think that Luffy was the mastermind behind this assassination attempt of a Yonko? And all three of them just pause, look at each other, and all say at the same time, no. Because it's the Straw Hats having to deal with Buggy with when Buggy is now an emperor as well later on, and it's just yeah, there's Zoro's yeah, there's no way Mihawk would work for Buggy. This is ridiculous type of a thing. It's yeah, Crocodile wouldn't either. This is definitely something's going on here. And this is yeah, cut back to Fusha Village with Dodon and Makino and Woopslop reading about Luffy being the mastermind of the assassination attempt of the assassination attempt of Big Mom, and they're just yeah, no, Luffy wouldn't have been able to do that. That is not something that Luffy would have done, type of a thing. I'm not saying that Luffy wouldn't have attempted to try to assassinate someone, but he wouldn't have not come up with this big Machiavellian plan that Beige came up with. That's not something that Luffy would have done. Nami or Robin, I can see having come up with it, but not Luffy. But even at that point in time, I would assume they're all just yeah, no, that's not real. But then also paired with that time frame is also when we is after that time frame, after the Reverie arc and everything, is when we get the news about Sabo going around. And as I stated, we see Makino's reaction and we see Don's reaction with as torn up about it as they are, with not only finding out that Sabo was alive, but also finding out that now he supposedly has killed this king. And there's this, it's oh my god, Sabo's alive. Oh my god, Sabo, what did you do? Type of a thing. And we don't see Woopslap's reaction in that regard as far as I can remember. So I don't think... I would assume he was probably, again, this combination of, oh God, Sabo's been alive all this time. Oh my God, Sabo, what did you do? Type of a thing. That combination of those emotions. We do technically get like in the Film Red tie-in episodes, we have the moment where like all the posters for Uta's concert are going all over the place. And Didon or Makno and Woopslap are like discussing the concert in the bar. And I know this is technically not canon, but I just find it cute that they're like discussing this in the bar and everything. And Woopslap is like, she looks very familiar when he's looking at the posters. And Makino's like, oh, well, that's Uta-chan. Shanks' daughter. And he's like, oh, yeah. Well, it's nice to know that someone that's, has a good reputation came from our village. Making jibes at Luffy and Ace and Sabo and jibes at Shanks to a degree. It's just, well, it's nice to see that someone good came from our village. And then we do see Woopslap in Film Red. He is there during the opening, Uta's big opening musical number in New Genesis, when we're cutting to all the different places around the world and everything. We see Woopslap in the village watching the performance along with like a bunch of the other members of the town, a bunch of the other townsfolk and everything. In regards to stuff that might happen in the story, I don't really have a whole lot. I mean, like, we'll probably see other stuff down the line when we get more of the information as to what happened at Reverie, when we get more information. The next time we get, like, an update for the places around the world, either because of, like, newspaper stuff getting published, or, we have not seen their reaction yet to Luffy's new bounty in regards to him fully being an Emperor of the Sea. We have not seen that yet. So that'll probably be something that we'll be hopefully getting soon, or possibly within the next cover page series, with seeing these reactions and everything of like, oh my God, what happened with Luffy? Why does he look that way? And, with the Gear 5th and everything, what happened and everything, like, Woopslap over in the corner, just like having a migraine, going like, oh God, you beat another Emperor. Oh God. Oh, that boy is going to give all of us heart attacks one day. That type of a thing. I don't know exactly how that's going to happen. There's the whole thing of, like at the end of it, like I've done like the the reunions and stuff like that, where like Luffy and Sabo maybe go back home to Fusha Village, and, Luffy's reunited with all of them. Woopslap shows up at the coast when they're all there, and, like, he tries whacking Luffy on the head with his cane, and, like, it doesn't do anything, because, Woopslap doesn't have... It's a blunt force object hitting Luffy, which already does nothing, and Woopslap does not know hockey. Although Woopslap knowing hockey would be exceedingly funny. Him learning hockey, just to, like, hockey up his cane and, like, bang Luffy on the head. Or just so he could at least actually, like, hit Sabo with it, since Sabo's a Logia. That would be funny. But, most of the, some of the rulers that I'm going to talk about in these videos, they're probably not going to have much bearing on what else happens in the story. Because, like, it's not like Fusha Village has, like, any form of, like, a mobile fleet or an army that they can, like, set up and start up and, like, dispatch ahead and go and try to help Luffy. They don't have that. They're a small fishing village, that has a bunch of windmills in it. They don't really have anything that they can do with that. Some of the other kingdoms that I'll end up talking about down the line that I mentioned before, like Drum Island, with the Sakura Kingdom and Alabasta and the Ryugu Kingdom and Dressrosa and stuff like that, like, they have different military fleets that they can always send to go and help the Straw Hats or to fight against the world government, depending on how that goes. But Fusha Village doesn't really have that, so until it gets to the end of the story and, like, we get some form of an epilogue where, like, Luffy goes home, and all the Straw Hats go back to their villages or towns and, like, see their hometowns again and, like, see their families again, there's not really much else we're gonna get. In regards to, like, huge amounts of character development. I mean, like, I can see that maybe Woopslap, like, if Luffy does end up becoming King of the Pirates, it would be hilarious if that does end up happening. Well, I do want Luffy to become King of the Pirates. That's the whole point of the frickin' manga. That is the whole point of this frickin' story that has been going on for, 25 years, longer than that at this point in time. It's the whole point, is to get the smiling rubber boy to be the king of the pirates. Um, and teach us about weird powers and stuff along the way. Um, but like, Whoop Slap, if Luffy becomes king of the pirates, like Whoop Slap is probably like, what would be hilarious is like that happens and like it's shown in all of the newspapers that like Monkey D. Luffy is now the king of the pirates, and like what would be hilarious if it like all of them are in Party's bar at this point in time, and they're reading the newspaper, and like Whoop Slap is just like, yes, he did it, like just really really happy, and everybody's just like staring at Whoop Slap like, Makino, what did you give him? Makino, I haven't given him anything yet. Like Whoop Slap's actually just like really happy, or just to continue with the way that Whoop Slap is, because he's a crotchety village elder that like has no sense of humor. He's just like, that damn boy, that damn rubber boy. You know, how dare he do this to our village? That would just be funny. Either one of those would be hilarious to watch as the reaction for like when Luffy becomes Pirate King, like everybody reads about it. But we'll see how that goes. That's what I have for Whoop Slap. The next one that I'll be talking about for these is actually another mayor from the East Blue, is Boodle from Orange Town, because I love Boodle and he's great. So that's what I have for this. I thank you for watching. I did not realize I was going to do a 36-minute video about Whoop Slap, but there you go. So I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye! Stop celebrating, you fools! Just what's there to be happy about having a criminal come from our village?